is just a huge honor for me today to be podcast interviewing Dr. Tito Norris, DDS. He's devoted to creating smiles for a lifetime. His unique background in mechanical engineering provides him with a distinct advantage in mastering the forces, vectors, and movements inherent in performing orthodontic treatment. Dr. Norris is a 1992 graduate of the University of Texas Health Science Center at San Antonio Dental School. He then moved to Washington, D.C., where he completed General Practice Residency at the VA hospital, followed by orthodontic specialty training at Howard University, which was obviously named after me. After serving as an Air Force orthodontist in Misawa, Japan, Dr. Norris returned to San Antonio, Texas in 98 and opened a thriving private orthodontic practice. He holds several patents and trademarks, is board certified by the American Board of Orthodontics, and is a member of 10 dental organizations and study clubs. He lectures nationally and internationally on topics including aesthetics, efficiency, sustainability, customer service, accelerated treatment, and aligner technology. He has created and manages several other companies pertaining to real estate investments, marketing, retail sales, and a nonprofit providing complementary orthodontic care to children in need. In 2007, Dr. Norris began to work to fulfill his dream to make his office completely green. The office is part of a volunteer renewable energy program with CPS known as Windtricity. In April 2008, he completed a solar energy project at his orthodontic practice with the installation of 80 solar panels, providing 16 kilowatts of electricity. In 2010, an office expansion was completed, making it the first LEED certified orthodontic office in the world. In 2019, construction was completed on a second LEED certified office. LEED is Leadership in Engineering and Environmental Design and is the U.S. government stamp of approval on environmentally responsible office construction. The Norris 2026 bracket system, paired with the Norris extra broad wire, is the biggest leap forward in 3D control and full express. I mean, dude, you are just unstoppable. We had you on the cover of Dental Town magazine as easy as 456 by Dr. His name's Robert Tito. He goes by Tito. I think it's so cute. His dad's Robert, and he was baby Robert, and he said in Spanish that's Robertito. So he just goes by Tita, which I know that you're not going to believe this, but that's actually my favorite vodka. And so I prepared for this seminar by drinking 47 gallons of Tito vodka this morning. And my gosh, it's just an honor to have you on the show. How are you doing? And where do you get the energy, dude?
Well, to answer your first question is I'm doing great. I mean, I think we were all kind of shocked by this COVID experience this past year. We didn't know what was going to happen. What's the economy going to do? And it's actually been a very positive thing for us. I mean, people aren't spending their money on travel, but instead they're spending the money on themselves. And so we've seen a real, uptick in patients. And so, we're doing great. And what was the second question? Because I'm not good at
is the cliche
questions.
true? Because I was talking to a 56-year-old lady yesterday that went ahead and got her implants done because she goes, I'm wearing a mask everywhere I go anyway. This is the perfect time to have your front teeth extracted and have implants. Do you think wearing a mask made people who were self-conscious of ortho, like adult ortho, do you think it increased demand since you're wearing a mask anyway?
I do. I think that's definitely part of it. And I think the other part of it is actually, believe it or not, Zoom phenomenon. I think so many people are on Zoom calls and they're actually looking at themselves close up and look at their smiles. And they like, wow, my teeth are really jacked up. I think I better just go do something about that. So I think it's a combination of all those things. People having the money, wearing the mask, and seeing themselves in a different way that they've never seen themselves.
Oh, I know. And a lot of dentists, just recently, like I know the pandemic, it was a year old in March, but right about February, they actually found their oven. And, they thought they just could only order pizza, but they found an oven in their kitchen. My gosh.
It's kind of funny you mentioned that, Howard, because actually what I did over the pandemic, I started a little cooking channel. I love to cook. I've always cooked. I kind of grew up at my mom's apron, if you will. And so I started a cooking channel called What's Cooking with Dr. Tito. So check it out. It's free. It's on YouTube. And I've got, 5 or 6 episodes, some stuff I like to cook. It's pretty yummy.
Man, I mean, I say, if I had half your energy, I think I'd probably just melt. I don't even know where I want to start with you. There's so many areas I want to start, but I want to go into this one first, and that is when I look at the 12 specialties recognized by the ADA. I mean, my gosh, you look, a lot of dentists think we're in a competitive industry. I mean, restaurants, 20% go bankrupt in the first year, 40% are bankrupt in 3 years, and 60% are bankrupt in 5 years. Dentists, they only go bankrupt if they had their license taken away. Look at hours. Every donut store in Arizona has the same hours, 7 days a week, 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. And then you got some dentist that has a 99% don't go bankrupt. They have 3-day weekends, and they're always get out their violin and tell you how competitive their industry is. But when I look at the 12 specialties, orals, everybody else is competing with some guy across the street. Dude, you're competing with publicly traded companies, well-funded, that could run at a loss for a decade, like do-it-yourself, things like that, and all that stuff. Gosh, did you ever in your wildest dreams think orthodontics would be this competitive? I mean, I kind of feel like you tried out for the high school football team and were accepted into the NFL, and don't know if you were ready for that. I mean, what's the big one out of the do-it-yourself aligner deal out of Tennessee?
So here's the thing. I mean, this DIY movement, it's actually been a blessing for us, believe it or not, because what we're doing is we're actually retreating these patients who it just didn't work out for them. And I can't tell you how many patients we've been able to see that tried the those do-it-yourself aligner programs, and it just it's just not going to work. I mean, you know how hard it is to take a PVS impression, and for a patient to try to do it themselves without any training. I mean, the aligner is not going to fit that well, and they've got a technician or some AI software straightening the teeth. I mean, they don't know anything about occlusion or, my gosh, gingival margins or, all of the things that we look at, bolt and tooth size discrepancy. So, quite frankly, I think we've become a more valuable commodity. And I think, one of the ways that we've differentiated ourselves is by doing some more complicated, interdisciplinary care. I mean, I think there's been quite a number of general dentists who are kind of, swimming the shallow end of the pool and doing some aligners on fairly straightforward cases, and that's fine. And then sending the tougher cases to their specialist. And I think that's kind of where it ought to be anyway. I mean, that's the way dentistry is designed.
And it seems like, when you look at when you look at free enterprise, I mean, the main takeaway is that competition is good for an industry. And
Sure.
and whenever you the government passes a law like Brazil. Brazil, you can't import anything in that country. And they think they're saving jobs in Brazil, but they don't realize they have half the GDP per person as Mexico, which has half the GDP per person as the United States. It doesn't work. So did Smile Direct Club, Candid Bite, Smile Love, Snap Correct, did they do something that you thought, hey, that's smart, I'm going to steal that idea? Did they do anything that impressed you to say, you're right, that is smart, why can't we do that?
Well, they've done some very targeted marketing obviously they're using the best in class marketing techniques, using personas, using anybody that's looking for anything dental or orthodontic to follow them around, using the tracking software. So yeah, I mean, we've touched on some of those things. I'm kind of in a unique situation. I've got an established practice that, quite frankly, we're bursting at the seams at this one office, and then I've got a new office where we're actually trying to grow. So yeah, I've taken some of their strategies, marketing strategies, and implemented them in that new practice where we're trying to make it grow.
So you would say they've obviously excelled in marketing, that's pioneering things that they've done that the other 10,000 orthodontists could start doing tomorrow. What about some of the other stuff, like instead of when the orthodontists started complaining here in Phoenix about Smiles Direct Club, they'd say, well, do you think they're going to automate the whole thing? And I said, well, yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, you're not tired. You didn't do anything. You just sat there all day. You didn't work or move or sweat. He's like, are you kidding me? And I was like, that's why you'll have a job. It's not going to be automated. And if you work your ass, I'll never forget when I was at Safeway one day and I was unloading my cart and when I unloaded something, I actually scanned it. And I thought to myself, God, could you imagine having a job where someone can accidentally do your job? I mean, you can't accidentally do a molar root canal. But I just accidentally did her job. And I swear to God, it wasn't even 10 years. And now they have the do-it-yourself checkout lanes, and they're trying to move in that direction. But some of the stuff they did, I made me think you make all the trays, you have them come in every month for, say, 24 months. Well, they just give them all your trays on day one. I mean, was there anything like that where you thought, yeah, that is faster, easier, higher quality, lower cost, smaller?
We've been doing that. We've been doing that for years, Howard. On day one, we've always given our patients all their aligners, and just simply it's a storage issue for us. I mean, we've got hundreds of Invisalign patients, and there's no way that we could store all those aligners for all those patients. So that thing was solved a long time ago. What we have done more recently is to utilize dental monitoring to actually have virtual appointments. So rather than seeing our aligned patients, once every 3 months, we're now seeing them every 6 or 9 months. And because we can monitor them remotely. And, I don't know if that's a page out of the DIY book, but it's definitely something that we're moving in that direction just for efficiency and convenience on not only our part, but also the part of the patients.
Okay, just FYI. So, do orthodontists call that whole space DIY? Is that what they're calling the Smiles Direct by DIY orthodontics?
Yes.
Or orthodontics?
Yep.
And then what you just said, are you guys calling that teledentistry, telehealth? What do you call that?
Teledentistry.
And what product are you actually using in your office?
I'm using one that's called dental monitoring.
Okay, dental monitoring. Yep.
And they're actually a French company. And they use some AI software, and of course, we here in the office, I have a dedicated employee who's in charge of monitoring that and keeping up with those patients who are on that service. Mm-hmm.
And we had the CEO on, Philip Salah, from November 2020. So I took geometry, so I should know how many months ago that was. But that's an interesting technology. Some people are saying they don't know if this is the new, Zoom and teledentistry and telehealth. It's just hype during the pandemic, but when everybody's vaccinated and this thing's gone, it'll go too. So do you think it's fad or here to stay?
Well, so I think there was a big rise in initial examinations, over Zoom and things like that, like tele exams, if you will. And, for me, that just doesn't work. I mean, I've got to take a lot more measurements. I need accurate records. I need to really, I need to look at the tonsils, the tongue, and measure the lips. So there's so many things that I just can't get off of a Zoom call. But it's a nice kind of a screening tool. And so if you're asking me where this is going to fit into my practice in the future, I think it's going to be a nice little screening tool to kind of screen out, what's the riffraff and who's really serious about, coming in and being a patient and being a part of our practice. So I think it's going to have a role long term. This just kind of jump started that thing.
And then I want to get rid of there's so many wives' tales that people believe, and there's just no data for them. And I do believe about this Zoom conference, but I'm so in my mind, everything I've heard from it's always been a man. And I don't know. I just believe, women buy 99% of pantyhose and makeup. But during this pandemic, male makeup is up 300%, 300%, because they're looking at Zoom. And I have to tell you, I have the same issue. I'm 59 this year. I don't even need, I brush my teeth and floss in the shower. I shave in the shower because I'm bald, so I just shave the whole damn thing. I don't ever look in a mirror. But when you see male makeup up 300% and orthodontists like you saying, I've had several male friends say, I didn't even notice. Howard, have you seen it? They point to some liver spot the size of a penny that I've known that's on their face for 10 years. But a lot of men don't look at their teeth. So I'm wondering, is adult orthodontics traditionally mostly women, or is it and the decades you've been doing it, is more males doing it, or talk about the difference in the sexes, how it appears to orthodontics.
So great question. And so what we're seeing in males, honestly, is more of the sleep disorder breathing issues. So they're coming in with a lot more wear. Okay. And your wear patient is a sleep disorder breathing patient until proven otherwise. And I'm very fortunate to have Jeff Rouse here in San Antonio, and have been able to stand on his shoulders and learn quite a bit from him, taking his SPEAR course. And so this is a big part of our practice now. Over half our practice is adults, and that's split. I'm going to say 1/3, 2/3, 1/3 male, 2/3 female. But the male segment of the growing population, just because of the sleep disorder breathing, is being recognized. So, and we have so many more bags of so many more tricks in our bags of tricks than we've ever had before. Including the mini implant supported RPEs and adjunctive dome procedures, SFOT, all these kinds of things that are MMA, maxillomandibular advancement. So this has really opened up a new world of patients for us, just really in kind of like the past 5 years, honestly.
And that is something that when I got all the way out of dental school, never heard that once about anything about sleep.
Sure.
And never heard about it once. And now I can't go anywhere. I mean, I go over to a friend's house, and they got a 5-year-old kid sleeping on the couch, and he's just like, you just see it. I can't believe I never heard it in dental school. I never saw it, never thought of it, and now I see it everywhere.
Right.
My gosh. I just see it all.
And once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's just it's everywhere. Once you really know what to look for, and there's so many signs and symptoms that we as dentists in the mouth is one of the first places where these signs and symptoms show up. And unfortunately, our physician friends, they're kind of struggling. And we're actually the ones kind of educating them many times on on some of these things.
Well, the number one stressful question that I keep getting asked this is the mama has a baby, she's in the hospital, and now they will have a I forgot what she's called, but she's a nursing teacher expert that will come in there, and you know how your dad gave you that sex talk the night before you got married. That
Right.
I don't have one friend that got the talk. Well, now they're actually structurally sending in a person, and they're the ones telling everybody, diagnosing that they got a frenulum under their tongue,
Right.
and they need to go get it snipped and all that, and it's just causing a lot of anxiety because they want to do the right thing. It's their baby. Where
Sure.
do you stand on all the what are those? What are those teachers called?
It's called a lactation consultant.
A lactation consultant.
Lactation consultant, right? And actually, back in the day, midwives used to have a pinky nail that they would just leave long and sharp on purpose, and they would actually, as soon as the baby was delivered, if they saw that there was a frenectomy, they would go and just do a little frenectomy right there.
Wow,
on the baby. So,
that is so wild! I never even heard of that. That is crazy.
So I'm all about all 3 of my kids, breastfed, and I'm all for that. The immunities that pass, the bonding that happens, and the ability to properly suckle is I think is really important, and I think it starts there. And that's one of the things that we look at on our examination is the functional tongue tie that's just developed by Audrey Yoon. She was at UCS, I believe, or Stanford, excuse me.
So that is a thing then. So you generally have a high respect for these lactation consultants? I mean, are you impressed with them?
Absolutely. Yeah. They really help, young mothers in particular, get over, I mean, really, like you said, it's that talk. No one's really ever really shown them or helped them how to, get their baby to properly latch. And they can be very, very helpful and very effective. I mean, they've got support groups, they've got one here in San Antonio called La Leche League. So it's kind of a big thing. Yeah.
I want to ask something. You love the youth. I mean, when you go into dental school, God, they look young. Don't they look young? You go into
Oh,
dental school. Oh my God. I remember when I was when I just became a dentist, I'd go into the second grade classes because that was dental health month. And I would do every second grade class, elementary. They had to deal with Crest and it was dental health month. I did that forever. And I remember when I was a young dentist and I opened up here in 87 and you go in that second grade class, they were just babies. Well, now that I'm 59, I go into the AT Still and Midwestern. It looks like that second grade class, you know? I mean, they're just so young. And I love their youth. They're puppies, they're playing, but you spend an hour with them, and my God, they want to get out and learn implants and bone grafting and sinus lifts and endos and perio and pediatric dentistry and silver diamine fluoride and Invisalign. And I mean, they just want to learn it all. And I'm like, Spanky, slow down, because in 1900, there were no specialties and healthcare was 1% of the GDP. At the end of the century, it was 14% of the GDP, with the physicians had 58 specialties. We had 8. Now it's only 2020, only a fifth of the way into the next one, and we're up to 12 specialties. And I tell them you can't master 12 specialties and that what you got to do. There was a big famous book, Malcolm Gladwell, about, do your 10,000 hours to master something.
right,
And,
right.
and there's always room at the top for one guy who understands it and for the best who can solve it. But there's no room for a jack of all trades where no one knows what's going on. So how do you dampen the excitement of all the kids that come out of dental school that want to learn 12 specialties? And you're like, dude, first you got to get good at one damn thing, and you're going to have to work not only with 12 other dental specialists on this big team, but you're going to have to work with 58 specialties at the hospital. I mean, my friends in eyes, there's opticians that do glasses, there's ophthalmologists that only do glaucoma. I got a buddy at the gym that only does retinas. I mean, so you're talking about a little eyeball, and they already have a whole full hand of specialties. So how do you teach these young kids that are all excitable to try to get focused and good at one thing?
Well, I think the thing to do is just ask them to just do what they love. I mean, find out what it is that you really love. And for me, that was it just came organically. I had studied engineering in college, and then when I got to dental school, um, honestly, I just fell in love with the specialty of dentistry, and orthodontics, because it combined, what I was already good at, which was, like solving three-dimensional puzzles, right? And that's what orthodontics is solving a three-dimensional puzzle and putting it, in a mouth that was attached to a patient who was, not just a patient with a personality, and then also, the general health that comes along with that. And it combined, what I loved about orthodontics is it combined, the like I said, that mathematics, the engineering, that thinking part, and also the psychology of motivating the patient to do what they need to do to get the result. And then you combine that also with the artistic approach of building these, a beautiful smile in a very predictable way. And so that all of that sort of passion led me to the development of my own bracket system. And so, brief history here, Howard, and that is Edward Engel is kind of known as the grandfather of orthodontics. And 150 years ago, he was basically making brackets and wires out of gold. And so he decided that the size of the bracket was the correct size of bracket needed to be 22 thousandths of an inch in order to fit the wires that he wanted to use to control the teeth. And these wires were all made out of gold. So that 022, or 22 thousandths of an inch, that became like the world standard and has been passed around from generation to generation to generation. And it's never changed in 150 years. And so when I got into the field of orthodontics, once again, coming from a different background, I kind of asked the question, well, why? Why is it that that all brackets are still made in this 22 thousandths of an inch slot? And I just couldn't get a good answer. And it was like, well, just because that's always been done. And so I said, well, we don't use those big wires anymore. Like the wires that we like to use are now 19 thousandths of an inch, or 019. So why don't we just make a bracket that fits the wires that we like to use? And so that's kind of what we came up with. And that's the Norris 2026 system, which had a different iteration a few years ago, but is basically back on the market as Norris 2026 system. And the what's behind that basically is we now have a wire, or we now have a bracket that fits the wires that most orthodontists like to use. Okay, so that gives us better control in finishing and helps us be more efficient so that the patients spend less time in treatment because they're spending less time in the finishing stages of orthodontics. Because, in orthodontics, in the beginning stages, you're leveling, aligning, and things are looking better, and that's kind of the sexy part. But honestly, the rubber meets the road in the details. As everything else in dentistry, we work in the sub-millimeter world, and if you've got an appliance system that's very accurate and can give you great control in your finishing stages, then you're going to be much more efficient. And so that was sort of like the project, or that was the story, or the birth behind that 026 or 020 by 026 or the Norris 2026 system.
That is amazing. I one of the things I want to say about angle, though, you triggered me a thought, is that the first president of the American Dental Association was William Henry Axon, who was a DDS MD 1815 to 1891. So was who you just said. The father of American orthodontics was Edward H. Angle, also an MD DDS. And so is the current president of the American Dental Association, is an oral surgeon from right here in Arizona, Daniel James Clementson, DDS, MD. It's kind of interesting because Pierre Fichard, when he started dentistry was a specialty of medicine. A lot of people call orthodontists a specialist. They're actually a subspecialist of dentistry, which is a specialty of medicine. And back in the day, dentistry was so new that everybody that was a legend back then was an MD, who
Right.
kind of following Pierre Fichard started this new thing, DDS or whatever. But that makes me go somewhere else, and that is the fact that I think it's very bizarre. You know when you see something show up in like you're an engineer who's also a dentist, who's also an orthodontist, who's also a family man, all these things. But when you learn something in like another field, and then you see it in your own field, it
Right.
really hits you. And when I was in MBA school, they kept saying, be aware of this, that, it's the people in accounting that always discover the big problem in like marketing. Everybody in marketing doesn't see it.
Right.
And you just see in all these companies, like you think at Intel, like the programmers would figure out their problem, but it's always another agency figuring out. And in your specialty or subspecialty of orthodontics, the anthropologists are the one telling all the Americans, like, hey, everything that the orthodontist is treating? Yeah, we just don't see that in the last 200,000 years of this entire species. I mean, so
That's
they're
right.
all saying, and I'm like, well, why is an anthropologist telling me this? Why aren't the orthodontists telling me this? But when you listen to their deal, and I don't know if you know this, but Lucy, the oldest Homo sapien, 1.6 million years old, is right up here at ASU. 40-inch tall girl that's 17 with her wisdom teeth coming in, 40 inches tall. But the anthropologists are saying that everything you see and everything you're doing, they don't see in the graveyards in the last 200,000 years. So what happened? Again, there's a lot of theories, and then some of your big gurus, like the big guy in Australia who thought he figured it all out with the Aborigines, that doesn't seem to hold up water. The New York Times printed that article by, is it Mu Orthodontics? Is it Mu out of, yeah, the orthodontist, Mu Orthodontics. I mean, they got a big cover on the New York Times, how 2 British orthodontists became celebrities. But a lot of the science guys say, nah, that doesn't hold up. But what's your take on it? How come you spend your whole life treating something that might not have existed 500 years ago?
Well, I mean, this is all conjecture, but when I was in my residency program in Washington, D.C., we had the luxury of going to the Museum of Natural History. And we actually got to see, these skeletons from, thousands of years ago and watch these malocclusions basically develop over time. But it seems like it correlates with the modern diet, right? So, fire and then cooking and then processed foods. And so we're not, like chewing and gnawing and developing these big masters and bones. We all know that form follows function, right? So I mean, if you had to gnaw on some raw meat, and you're going to be forming these big bigger bones and bigger jaws, and the what you're eating is more abrasive, right? So your teeth are wearing down, and even proximally, there was some wear that's been shown in some studies there. So, I think that the modern diet has actually changed our facial features, and we're less, we've got weaker jaws, we've got smaller jaws. And, it's amazing how many patients I see that need maxillary expansion, because, our maxilla is just, they're so narrow today. And it's also amazing how many times I see impacted teeth, not only impacted wisdom teeth, but impacted canines. If you also look at this historically, okay, so what's the most commonly missing tooth? It's actually a third molar, right? The second most commonly missing tooth is a second mandibular premolar, right? And then the third most commonly missing tooth is a lateral incisor.
Okay, say those again. I'm a slow typer. First is the wisdom tooth.
Wisdom tooth, right? The second most commonly missing tooth is a second mandibular premolar. And then the third most commonly missing tooth is a maxillary lateral incisor. So if you consider teeth as kind of like groups of teeth, all right? So look at your molars, right? Well, we used to actually have fourth molars, right? And that dropped off. And now our third molars are kind of like dropping off, right? So if you look at like the canine through second bite, right? In that group of teeth, it's a second bite. So it's always the last tooth that starts to kind of like hit the highway and drop off. Same thing with our incisors. It's not the centrals that are missing. It's the laterals that are, microdonts are missing. So it just seems like that's Mother Nature's pattern, is to, as our jaws are getting smaller, it tends to drop the last tooth in that series of teeth.
Huh, that is really interesting. So the most common missing tooth is the third molar, and the second most common missing tooth is the second mandibular premolar, and the third is the maxillary lateral incisor. And your takeaway was what? It's always the what in the tooth?
Well, I mean, if you consider those three teeth as sort of like one in a group of teeth, like if you consider the third molar as the third molar, right, then it's dropping. If you consider the second premolar as the third tooth in the series, but if you took a canine, a first premolar and a second premolar, that's that's the third tooth in that series, and that's dropping off, right? And if you consider, we have four incisors or two on each side, it's a second tooth that's now dropping off. It just seems like that's a pattern in Mother Nature.
Huh. That is really interesting. The one thing also I noticed is that I graduated high school in 1980, and I went to Bishop Carroll's, a Catholic high school. A quarter of Wichita is Catholics. And I mean, my mom and dad had 7 kids. My friend Brian Hesse, I was almost all the way through grammar school before I realized that his dad was his oldest brother, and that grandpa over there was really his dad. They had 21 kids in the Hesse family.
Wow.
And back when we grew up, it was just the most messed up kid that had no chance of ever attracting a mate and reproducing, have offspring, got ortho. And if they thought, you had to join the nunnery or the priesthood, you got braces. Now the families are shrunk down to 2 kids. It seems like everybody gets braces. I mean, it's just a rite of passage. If you're in a neighborhood with $60,000 a year household median income higher, they're all going to get braces. And then they seem to get it again after their first divorce. And then I'm in Arizona, which is the Florida of the West. So when you become a widow and you're up in west of the Mississippi River and Iowa and all those places, you come to Arizona. But if you're east of Mississippi, you go to Florida. And Arizona, I know this is inappropriate, but Arizona is the only state. What is the number one most common broken bone in Arizona, unlike the other 50 states?
I'm guessing it's the hip.
It's the rib. And you know why? You know why your 80-year-old grandma broke a rib? Because grandpa died and she moved down to a trailer park in Arizona, and she's salsa dancing and she's active again. And it is. And they're getting braces. I mean, I have 70-year-old, oh my God. I had a 90-year-old man one day tell me about this hot chick that moved in across the street. And finally I'm like, I don't even know, but how old is she? He goes, well, I'm 94. She's only like 88. And I'm just like listening to this 94-year-old man describe an 88-year-old. Yeah. I mean, this thing never goes away. But the point I'm trying to making is orthodontics went from real expensive and real scarce to now everybody's getting it. Young, middle age. I mean, I look at this going like 3 or 4 times. And also my boys, you know, when I got out of school, all the brands were already made. I mean, they already had Crest, Colgate, Listerine, all those things like that. And I've lectured in 50 countries, and I swear to God, you can't go to a single country without. Once they find out you're a dentist, first thing out of their mouth is Invisalign. And my gosh, I mean, I remember in Cambodia, Myanmar, Vietnam, I mean, just totally perfectly beautiful girls, but they all wanted Invisalign, you know? So it's just, I think it's a, I think the number one goal of a species is to reproduce, have offspring, and you know everybody wants to be as pretty as the peacock. And I think that orthodontics is game theory to try to increase your chances of attracting another primate to mix your gametes with. And I don't think this industry is even going to slow down. I mean, and the point I'm making is that whole rant was to explain that I really think it's cosmetics because, I mean, I don't know, America. I mean, everything they eat is a Pop-Tart and applesauce. I mean, when people start saying that that they need orthodontics for health purposes, maybe a crossbite, maybe a breathing thing, but what percent is it really just to increase my odds I can reproduce that offspring?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what the percentage is, but we're definitely not just straightening teeth for cosmetic things these days. We're definitely, you know, opening up oral volume, which you know many people don't realize when you open up your oral volume, and once again, along with the brackets, we've actually have these extra broad arch wires to help us develop larger arches. But when you open up the oral volume, the tongue actually assumes a more anterior superior position in the mouth, and which tends to open up your pharyngeal airway. Okay. And so that's, you know, our practice has really changed. Like I said, within the past 5 years, we're starting to ask a lot more questions about breathing and sleeping. We do CBCT on everybody. We do a minimal axial airway analysis. And, you know, looking at things like lingual freedom and mobility of the tongue. You know, yes, we want people to have a big, beautiful, you know, broad smile and so forth. But it just so happens that the most beautiful smile is the most functional smile. And so, you know, we're helping kids all the time. I mean, I can't tell you how many kids we get to the ENT to get, you know, tonsils and adenoids out. And adults having you know, nasal valves collapse that they don't know about it. They've got turbinates that they didn't know about. We pick this stuff up on the CBCT. They've got adenoids. So it's a lot more health oriented than what you might think. And we're really very proud to be at this stage in the profession where I think we're actually growing back into the physician world. And my wife's a physician, and she'll be the first one to tell you that, you know, she had nothing on dentistry when she was in medical school. And she's actually learned a lot from us regarding, you know, sleep and breathing and the relationship between, you know, I mean, you read Matthew Walker's work, you read, you know, there's just all kinds of great literature out there now talking about the relationship between, you know, having a patent nasal and pharyngeal airway and, you know, and a broad smile. And my gosh, we can spend several podcasts, you know, talking about breathing and orthodontics and orthopedics and sleep. But it is a fascinating world, and it's we're learning more about it all the time.
Well, talk about, I mean, there's 10,800 orthodontists. There's probably not a dozen that started a bracket system. Talk about the Norris 2026 bracket system paired with the Norris extra broad wires, the biggest leap forward in 3D control and full expression. What was going on in your practice where you thought, you know what, I mean, you probably had 20 different brands you could have bought? How many different ortho brands could you have bought?
Oh yeah, there was easily 20, probably more like 100. But quite frankly, I used pretty much for the majority of my career. And by the way, I'm gonna take a moment here. We're only 5 years apart, brother. Okay, so I'm 55.
You look good. You don't look my age. I mean, my gosh,
I've got siblings older than you. Okay, and I'm one of 9, by the way. So we're
really one of 9. So are you Catholic or Catholic?
Say that again.
So are you Catholic or Catholic? One of 9. You have to
No,
be
it's
Catholic
one of those,
or LDS in
it's one of
Arizona.
those yours, mine, and ours situations. Okay. So, yeah.
But anyway,
Yeah.
so you had 100 systems to pick from,
Yeah.
and you created your own.
I'm a systems guy. Okay. So once again, this is kind of my background is engineering, and what they teach you is you have to develop systems, right? And this is true in dentistry, and it's true in orthodontics. And so what I love about what's called a PSL, and that's not pumpkin spice latte, it's passive self-ligation bracket. And all that means is that this bracket has an integrated little spring clip, which actually traps and captures the wire so that you don't actually need those little rubber O-rings. Okay. So what I love about that is that that in and of itself is a system, because the door is either open or it's closed, right? And so we don't have to put the little wire ties on and spend a lot of time doing that. And you don't have you don't introduce the variability with either the wire ties or the little O-rings that are made by different company and have different strengths and so forth. So the door being open or closed. So I used a PSL bracket system for over 20 years. And the trouble that I was having with it, I was having trouble finishing, because there was just too much slop between the wires that I was using and the bracket, which had, kind of sloppy tolerances. And so basically that was kind of where the idea was born, and that is to get a bracket that actually fits the wires that we like to use and we like to finish with. And that's kind of where it all came about.
Wow. And is that a big part of your life now? Is going out there and spreading the Norris system?
It is. It's yes, it's part of, we just finished this weekend an in-office course. And yes, the bracket system was definitely a big part of it, but part of it was also, whole life balance and, finding joy in living and taking care of yourself. And, looking at the whole process from your marketing, your community reputation, to the new patient phone call, to the whole new patient experience. And then when you finish with the patient, celebrating that moment and staying in touch with the patient's family. So there was a lot more to the in-house course than just simply the bracket system. And I've traditionally done these courses for orthodontists, but there's becoming more and more interest among general dentists who do orthodontics. And so in the future, I think we'll have some courses for those people as well.
So you always hear the same thing, that orthodontists keep to their own, and there's a lot of data on that. Like you talk about the American Association of Orthodontists, dude, they have 95% membership. I mean, nobody has that high. I mean, the ADA would kill to have 95% of all the dentists in the ADA. I mean, they stick together as a clan, and there's I can only find 2 board certified orthodontists like you that teach GPs ortho, and that's Richard Litt, who used to do it at University UOP, ortho chairman, and then he went over to Detroit. And then right here in my backyard, Harry Green, who works with that Tip Edge. But though both of those guys sat on this show and tell me every time we go to dinner that once they started teaching this stuff to general dentists, they were blackballed by the AAO in St. Louis. They're just dead. And then when I talk to the companies, they say, well, we don't really focus on general dentists, because if any of our orthodontists find out we're selling it to a general dentist, they'll just get blackballed. They're dead. And the orthodontists, since they're doing volume, they're 80% of our sales anyway. So it's, it triggers orthodontists. So we're not going to focus on the general dentist. So you know all that. You don't live under a rock. So do you think that's why when I saw Smiles Drug Club came out, I thought this is good, because your enemy's enemy is your friend. Instead of the orthodontist saying he's competing with the general dentist doing ortho, now he's competing with Wall Street and do-it-yourself and publicly traded. And I actually sensed the dentist and the orthodontist breaking ice and seeing themselves on the same team against the do-it-yourselfers. But like you're lecturing, your courses, are general dentists even allowed to go to your course?
Well, what I'd like to do is have a course specifically designed for general dentists. And so this goes back a long way. So I started doing Invisalign in 1999. Okay. When they first launched, I was one of the very first doctors, and I have a long history with them. And so, very soon afterwards, there was some early adoption from dentists who wanted to do Invisalign. And so my position on that is like, listen, they're going to do it, right? They might as well be doing it well. And the best thing I can do, the best service I can provide for them is to help give them some guidelines on, listen, this is going to be an easy, profitable case for you. And this is going to be a case that's going to drive you nuts and you're going to lose money on. And it's better that you refer it. Okay. And I think that's the best service that I could possibly give my dental colleagues. And so, if I could give a similar service using my bracket system, and say, hey, listen, here's here's the kind of cases that are a slam dunk, and these are the kinds of cases you really want to stay away from. I think that would be a big service, to the GPs out there.
Well, you think you'll ever do that?
I definitely think I'm going to do it. There's been some interest already, and as soon as we have enough interest to make a course, yeah.
Well, no, if you put on Dental Town, I would love it. They ask for ortho courses all the time, and we have a quality thing. We're not going to let, I'm not going to let GPs do ortho courses, and so that just leaves me Lit and Harry Green. You'd be the third one, and Lit did his like a decade ago. But if you ever want to do that on Dental Town, and since you could put on Ortho Town too, that's fine too. I want to ask you another question. You seem to have a love with this Wounded Warriors, yeah. They did a deal, and I posted on Dental Town, and deal is pretty cool. It says San Antonio, Texas orthodontist Dr. Robert Tito Norris pays out 3X's weight in cash for candy for military troops. Stone Oaks orthodontist buys back 37,031 pieces of Halloween candy for Operation Gratitude, the USO, and Wounded Warriors. How did that get in your rearview mirror? What was going on in your life?
Great question. So first of all, I served in the military. I'm a veteran. I was in the U.S. Air Force stationed in Misawa, Japan. So I really have a soft spot for our veterans. And we here in San Antonio, of course, we've got we've got the Fisher House, we've got the Intrepid Center, we've got one of the best burn units, well, probably the best burn unit in the world. And these veterans, we're actually just recently partnered with some other dentists here in town to do smiling veterans, rehabbing veterans. So that's the easy part. The respect that I have for people who have served in our country and put their life on the line for our country is it really immeasurable. And I'm more than willing to go above and beyond to help give back to them who have given so much to us in our country. But the bigger picture, Howard, is this, and that is, within our community, I think, I feel a responsibility to really give back to my community that's been so generous to me. And so every quarter we take a Friday morning and we, as a team, we go out and we do some volunteer work for a charity. Okay. So that might be, yes, it might be the Wounded Warriors program, or it might be a Habitat for Humanity, or it might be the San Antonio Food Bank, or the Rape Crisis Center, or the Battered Women's Shelter, or the dog, I'm going to say dog pound, but I'm talking about. So all of these very worthy charities. And I'm telling you what, this is some of the best team building activities you can do, because you're out there, for instance, Habitat for Humanity. We're out there helping build these houses, and and it's hot, and you're sweating, and you're getting bit by mosquitoes, and you have paint in your hair. And I'll tell you what, you really have to go back to the office on Monday, and all that little squabbly stuff that you thought was so important, when you're back in the office with indoor plumbing and air conditioning, all that stuff just kind of goes by the wayside. So it's a really great team building. And then plus, the best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. Okay, that's I believe that was Mother Teresa that said that. But really, it's very heartwarming for all of our employees to have a piece of this community service and to give back to this community that's been so good to them as well.
And that's why 69 is my favorite number. That was how old Mother Teresa was when she won the Nobel Prize. And that's a solid joke, huh? Anyway, so I got a couple more questions. By the way, if I was going to get a course for you, I know it'd be cool to get one on your bracket system, but I'd actually rather have one on the Going Green. It doesn't matter. I know it's a trigger thing to talk about religion, sex, politics, violence, and half my homies hate everything to do with the government. I get it. And the other half, it doesn't matter, but the world thinks that we need to replace our electric cars with, our gas cars with electric cars. It doesn't matter if it's right or wrong. That's where the 8 billion herd of cattle are moving that way, and you're not going to stop them, right? I don't care how good of a rancher you are, but I just find it fascinating. And so I got to tell you my story of that because I'm in Arizona. So long time ago, I thought, well, yeah, I should do that. So I called this big company, and I own it's a 4,000 square foot building right here. Probably the same latitude, longitude as you are, or whatever. And he came in and he goes, he was only in there like 20 minutes. He goes, Howard, he goes, you're so bad under the roof. Don't invest any money on top of the roof because you don't have your lights don't shut off when no one's in the room. You don't have the right lights. He said, if you had $1 for you, I'd spend it below the roof instead of trying to get panels up there for the roof. And he said, I'm not even, he said, right now, Howard, he says, if I covered your whole roof with solar, there wouldn't be enough room. So he says, you got to get smarter under the roof. Now, that was a long time ago, but I just think it's really cool because, you're an engineer. And my gosh, engineers don't ever talk about right and wrong. They talk about trade-offs. And one of the big trade-offs is redundancy. Like if the grid goes down, I'd like to have solar. I just like the redundancy. In fact, I got 4 boys, and all 4 are just obsessed with getting off the grid just for the challenge of it. They just want to be off the grid. So talk about that. Talk about your journey with that. And are you completely off the grid now, or how's that working?
Okay, so first of all, in 2010, I went from 2,600 square feet to 5,200 square feet. So I basically doubled the size of my office. And so I had an opportunity to essentially build this new office kind of from scratch, really. It was kind of a blank template. And so I said, well, if I'm going to do this, right, let's go ahead and do it with some environmental stewardship in mind. And let's shoot for this LEED certification. And along the way, let's build in some redundancies. So in addition to the solar panels, yes, I also have a natural gas generator on the ceiling. And believe it or not, we actually did lose the grid here in San Antonio during our crazy, ice storm that we had in February, which is, this record-breaking time when it was below freezing for like a week, and we had to close our practices. But we, literally, I if the patients could have gotten here, we could have seen them because I had full power, and it was pretty nice because even when we had the rolling brownouts at home. I could just come up to the office and I had full power and Wi-Fi, internet, everything was going just hunky dory. So I think a good friend of mine, one of my mentors, his name is Homer Phillips, who just passed away recently, and he said, Tito, listen, you're going to be an influence on your patients and on your community, right? It's up to you to choose what type of example you want to lead. And so that's just something that I chose as a Boy Scout, as an Eagle Scout. One of the things that you sign up for, right, is to be a good steward, right? And so a good steward of everything, right? A good steward of your patients, a good steward of your team, a good steward of the environment. And I just don't think it makes sense to be wasteful. And so if you've given a choice between, okay, I've got these LED lights, which use minimal electricity, and you've got the old ones, why would I not invest and think long-term at all the electricity savings I'm going to get? So yes, we have some solar power on the office that provides us about 1/3 of our electricity. The other 2/3 of our electricity, we actually entered into a contract with our local authority to have the remaining 2/3 come from windtricity, so wind generated power. And so what we did was we negotiated a fixed price for that electricity back in 2010. And so now the price that we're still paying for that electricity is much less than the retail price or street price today. So it was thinking long game, and just also when you look at just the amount of savings we've had in terms of electric bills over the last 20 years in practice, it's been pretty significant, especially when you consider 2 facilities that are somewhere around 5,000 square feet each. I'm got HVAC going on, on basically 10,000 square feet of real estate. And so it just makes sense to be as smart about it as we possibly can.
Man, I mean, I just think that's cool. And you're an Eagle Scout. My God, you're you're hot. You're an Eagle Scout. You're a dentist. I mean, you're just. Is there anything you ever failed at?
Basketball.
Basketball. Okay, I'll give you that one. But my gosh, but I've heard in San Francisco. I know people. I don't want to be the guy who rains on the parade, but in San Francisco, a lot of my friends did it for marketing, and they're embarrassed about it because they say, "Yeah, I did that green thing. I went off the grid, all that kind of stuff. Now I have people driving an hour in a gasoline combustion car to go to the guy off the grid." He says it doesn't even make sense. He says, but they think they're rewarding me by burning, a barrel of oil all the way across from Oakland to come there. But don't you think this is going to be a big marketing thing? Because it seems like, some things people are lukewarm on, but they're not lukewarm on a lot of opinions about climate change, or like the Dallas Cowboys. That everybody loves them or hates them. I've never met a neutral person on the Cowboys. It's either America's team or the worst team ever. I think that's that way in climate change. I would think that all the environmental friendly people in San Antonio would want to reward you with their business by doing this. Are you seeing that?
We definitely have seen a number of patients that have chosen our office just due to our environmental stance, and probably honestly more than enough to have paid for the difference between kind of constructing our office in a traditional way and the extra 10% that it took to construct it in a LEED certified manner. So if you look at that difference, I mean, we have more than made up for that just in terms of the number of new patients that we've attracted due to our environmental stance.
Well, to me, maybe how people have these simplistic mnemonic devices and they might help you or not. People just do that. I mean, like when they go to the grocery store, if they want to buy a blender and there's 3 blenders, one's $1, one's $2, and one's $3, you just have a heuristic that the $3 one is better than the $1 one. You just think markets are efficient, all that stuff. Well, it just seems to me that solar, it can't be a good business decision, because if it was, they would knock on your door and they'd say, "Hey, how much is your electric bill?" And you say, "Well, it's $1 a month until I die." And they say, "Well, if you give me $100 after 100 months, it'll be paid off and you won't have an electric bill." And then when that happens, it's going to be $1 trillion a year industry and everybody will go solar. But it seems like if it was ready for prime time cash flow return on investment, they'd be knocking on your door. They'd show you the math. Everyone would do it. But so they're not there. But how close are they to the math?
They were pretty close, and here's the thing. When I did it, there was some very lucrative subsidies going on. So so this, I put $100,000 system in, and I think I only paid 20,000 for it, right? Well, I mean, 20,000, that's 20 months of electric bills, right? So that's pretty significant. So I think the payback was somewhere around the 5-year time, and then at that point on, the way I'd look at it is I'm kind of making money for the rest of my career. So it's and as anything else, the power of the solar panels has gone up, the price has come down. There's fewer subsidies, but I think if you run the numbers, and especially for someone who's going to be in practice for quite some time, I think they made sense to me.
Okay, so a quarter of our viewers are still in dental kindergarten school. They don't even have an out of jail card yet. But so a lot of what you're saying is flying out of their head. So kids, what he just said, I want you to listen to that. If you want more of something, you lower the price, or a tax incentive, lower the tax. If you lower the tax, lower the regulation, lower the price, you get more of it. If you want less of something, you raise your price, you raise the taxes, you raise the regulation, and you can kill the entire industry. And then here's what you do. I'll say, "Hey, doc, what's your favorite procedure?" And you say, "Oh, man, I love crowns." And I say, "Okay, how much you charge for a crown?" $1,000. "Okay, what are you going to do with your price next year?" "I'm going to raise it to $1,100. "Oh, so you hate crowns?" "No, I love crowns." Well, you can't love something and then decide to raise the price, raise the regulation, raise tax. If you truly want to see more of it, lower your price. And every time I go into a dental, I say, "What do you love the most?" And they tell me, and I'll say, "When's the last time you lowered the price?" And they, "I'm trying to raise the price. In fact, now I'm mad because the insurance wants me to lower the price." Dude, if you love something, you'll make it faster, easier, higher quality, lower price, and you'll make it smaller. Remember, the first steam engine was so damn big, it could only pump water out of flooded coal mines. But when it got smaller, like everything does, then it fit on a ship, and then it came over the cross, So if you love it, make it cheaper. And what he just told you, I know it's not ready for prime time, because once it can exactly replace your electric bill, but you have to pay your electric bill at the end of time, and you don't have to pay this till it was paid off, everyone's going to do it. And what was the answer? The government lowered the taxes or the regulation or a subsidy, etc. So if you love it, lower the price and do it faster and all that kind of stuff. So, my gosh, I can't believe we went over an hour. Can I keep you for a couple overtime questions?
Sure, go for it.
Okay,
yeah.
you sent me. I said, is there anything you want to talk about? You sent me a question. I'm not even smart enough to know what the question is. It says substitutions and autotransplantations in the aesthetic zone. I'm not even smart enough to know what the question is, so I'm just going to pretend. Hey,
Okay.
Tito, substitutions and autotransplantations in the aesthetic zone. What are your thoughts on those?
So
What
here's
the hell
thing.
are you even talking about?
We just talked about the fact that the besides the wisdom teeth, we're not going to count that, right? The second most commonly missing tooth is a lateral incisor, right? So if you have a patient who has a missing lateral incisor, and the aesthetic zone obviously is the front, the social six, right? The maxillary anterior teeth. So on these types of cases where patients are missing a maxillary lateral incisor, there is a way to lateralize the cuspid to make it look like a lateral, right? And to do that in a very predictable, systematic way, and to move that tooth over without affecting the midline, and to bring the premolar forward and intrude it and turn it into a cuspid, and to basically, give someone all natural teeth in their aesthetic zone, and to make it look real and to make it look really, really good. And I've got a lecture that I give, and I actually kind of pass out a little quiz in the beginning, and it's like, find the missing tooth. And there's, some can find it and some can't. And so that's the substitution part of that statement. And that is to substitute natural teeth for other natural teeth that are missing. The second part of that statement is the autotransplantation. And so now, typically, this is going to be a boy, a kid between 8 and 12 years old, who was, hit his bicycle or the side of the pool or a stairwell, and he knocked out a central incisor, right? So what do you do for this poor kid that doesn't have a central incisor? Well, you know that the alveolus is going to shrink over time. And so what we do is we take a mandibular second premolar, usually, that's typically the best donor tooth, and we move it from that position in the mandible to that position in the maxilla. And then once that's done in a very careful way, when the root is 2/3 to 3/4 formed. And I learned about this through a team of very talented clinicians in Norway and Denmark. They were a Scandinavian group, and I was just fascinated by it. And I saw this about 15 years ago, and I said, I've got to do this for my patients. And so we've been doing it really ever since, and and once again, we've done it a lot so that we've become really good at it. We have a team, oral surgeon that I work with, and then of course there's a restorative dentist involved as well. But this has become very predictable. And if you look at the studies behind it, the predictability is much like that of a dental implant, 90, 94, 95, 98% success rate on these types of cases. And so it's something that I love doing. I think it's a great service to do that, to have all natural teeth in the aesthetic zone.
So where my mind went on that is, I can't get out of my mind. The most common missing tooth, in order would be number one, third molar.
Right.
And
we're not going to count those, right? Because if they're missing, we say hallelujah, right? Because that means you don't have to get them out, right?
There's a method to my madness question, because I got to follow it up with the European. You said the second was the mandibular premolar, but the third is the maxillary lateral incisor, and I immediately went to elephants because tusks are canine teeth for all the animals except elephants. They are the maxillary lateral incisor. I wonder if that has anything to do with the fact that it's a third most common missing tooth. But I wanted to ask you this question. So the thing I love the most is, sapien. It's a 200,000-year-old animal. It would be absurd to look at an anthill with 1,000,000 ants and say, "Oh, see that ant over there? He's a genius." And see that ant over there? He's below average and dumb, and they're going to hold him back in school. Or to say that with crawfish or insects. I mean, humans. The biomass of human is equal with ants. It's equal with many other insects, and it'd just be absurd to think that. And then the people they say are the smartest people in the world, like they say factually that Sir Isaac Newton's the smartest person in the world. Oh, really? He lived in his mom's attic, never got married, never had sex, and died a virgin, and then took all of his money from his book Principles of Mathematics in 1867 and invested it in the tulip market and lost all his money? That's the smartest guy in the world. And then Einstein, the other smartest guy, when he won the Nobel Prize for his 1905 paper and got the $1 million, you know what he did with all the money? He gave it to his first cousin he was married to and said, "Go away and change your name and don't tell anybody you were married to me." So the smartest guy died a virgin, and the second smartest guy married his cousin. I think we all have the same brain. I think that's it's just what you're interested in. If you put your 10,000 hours in something, you're going to figure it out. So when I go around the world, I notice, lecturing in 50 countries, some people are into the differences in foods and architects and arts and all that kind of stuff. Not me, man. I mean, there's 2 million dentists. It's the same damn disease on the same damn species. In fact, our species has, a dog has 5 times the variance of DNA than a sapien. I mean, sapien's a very, very exact species. And they all see this disease slightly differently. And I notice in your profession, and over here, there's not enough room, we pull a first bicuspid. But in Scandinavia, instead of just pulling the third molar, they'll pull the third and the second. And I thought, wow, so the Americans are pulling a first bicuspid and they're pulling a second molar. And then I look at my dentist, and I want you to weigh in on this because I don't like extremists. And I unfortunately have some of my best drinking buddy friends, if their orthodontist did a 4 bicuspid extraction and butchered the face and dished everything in and made her ugly for the rest of her life, they go off the, and I'm like, okay, so you say that 8 billion people, no one needs 4 bicuspid extraction? And they're like, no one. Wow. I'm like, well, you're nuts. I mean, you can't say that about anything. So I know I'm such a shitty host. I just throw like 20 questions out there and hope that maybe there's something there you can comment on. But is the second bicuspid and the second molar? I mean, I've seen the variants. I've met orthodontists in both countries. That's an interchangeable thing. And what would you say to a general dentist who says there should never be a 4 bicuspid extraction? There's no indication for it. So address those two if you can.
Look, I would call myself a non-extractionist. Whenever possible, I try to get all the teeth in, right? Especially, to develop a bigger arch form and airway and these kinds of things. However, there are times when it just doesn't fit in the face, right? The lips are incompetent, and you don't have enough bone. Although that can be overcome with SFOT, but facially,
SFOT.
It's surgically facilitated orthodontic treatment. It's got a bunch of different acronyms. The other acronym is PAOO, periodontally assisted osteogenic orthodontics. It's also called Wilcodontics after the Wilco brothers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that even still a thing?
Oh, it's very much a thing. Very much a thing.
Wow.
We use it a lot in our practice for sure. Okay. So my point is that there is a time and a place for extractions, and extractions still happen. And I can't imagine, like not being able to treat a patient, just because, I'm never going to extract the teeth. Now, I mean, we still extract, but it's not as common as it used to be. I mean, I went to a program that trained me on a very extractionist protocol. And so I've definitely, learned a lot and changed some of my thinking since then. I extract a lot less than the way that I was trained. Let's just put it that way.
Okay. My gosh. So what he was talking about, I doubt many people that aren't orthodontists ever heard about, but explain the Wilco brothers. Because when I saw the first case, it almost scared me. Someone's all crowded and they one brother's a periodontist, one's orthodontist. So the periodontist like sections all the teeth and jaws in quadrants, and then explain it. It's crazy.
So basically, the periodontist, lays flaps, intentionally injures the bone, like pokes little holes and does some little cuts, and basically stimulates bleeding to the alveolar housing, and then packs that area with freeze-dried bone. And sometimes it will even do some soft tissue grafting at the same time, covers it all back up, and then. But by injuring the bone, that's causing bleeding and nourishment to your new osteoid, if you will, and then you can orthodontically move the teeth into that new developing bone, and you get a period of time with what's called a RAP effect. That's RAP, regional acceleratory phenomenon. And it usually lasts about 3 months. And it's during that period of time when you get this cellular cascade where the teeth are just literally flying because you've kind of made Swiss cheese out of the bone, and you've got all these healing cells that are coming. So you've ramped up your metabolism locally. And that's kind of the theory behind within, if you have wisdom teeth extracted, you get a RAP effect. If you have orthodontic surgery, you get RAP effect. If you do a MOPS procedure, there's another acronym for you, microosseous perforations, you also get a RAP effect with that type of thing. So we've got all these different tools at our hand, and as someone once told me, that he or she with the most tools wins.
And there's some genetics involved in this, because I've read things like say class 3s. I read something that Japan had the most class 3s, and you served. Thank you for serving, by the way. And you served in Japan. First of all, is that true that Japanese have the most class 3s? And if that was true, would that mean there's obviously a genetic component to orthodontics?
Yeah, I would say Asians have the most class 3, and Japanese are part of the Asian community, but I don't think it's specifically Japan. I don't quote me on this, but I think, I actually attended, when I lived in Japan, I attended an international conference on class 3 treatment, and it was actually held in Korea. And and there were people there from, China and South Korea and Japan and, Philippines. And so I think that the class 3 skeletal tendency is definitely a very Asian issue, much more prevalent in the Asian populations.
And beauty also is in the eyes of the beholder. I mean, I don't think beauty makes any sense, because, I read things beauty that, that up until just say 100 years ago, big fat women were the thing they wanted. That showed you were a really good farmer. And it wasn't until Twiggy came out that then it went the other way. And I've always thought it was very weird when you're in Asia and your waiter, bartender, waitress, she's gorgeous, she's beautiful, and she's telling me, and my boys are asking her, well, why are you eating at braces? They're looking at their teeth, and they don't even talking about their teeth. They turn to the side and they put their finger to their nose or chin, and they say, well, if your lip can't touch your upper finger, so I want to pull 2 bicuspids and pull it back. And then when she leaves, they're all like, that's like the prettiest girl in China. Who the hell knows her lip touches her finger and she's about to mutilate her body with 2 extractions? So a lot of this beauty stuff is just it's just kind of bizarre, weird, and changing, and fashionable.
Yeah, and very cultural as well. So one of the things when I lived in Japan, one of the things I learned was about this trait, because the Japanese people typically have a smaller maxilla, and of course the last tooth to erupt is the canine, right? So it's left with whatever leftover space there is. And so as the canine comes in, it doesn't have room, so it erupts to the outside. So you have these big, kind of fangy looking canines that are buccally displaced. And they have a name for it. It's called a yaeba, and it's considered like this really cute little thing in Japan. So it's considered kawaii or cute. But each culture has their own little thing. I mean, some cultures want a very protrusive look to their dentition. Others, they really admire spaces in between their teeth. Some cultures put jewelry in their teeth and mutilate their teeth. So it's definitely a very cultural type of thing.
I thought it was very telling. It was just this year where, when I went to dental school, they told us dentistry started with the Egyptians thousands of years ago, and they showed the bridges and all that kind of stuff. And they just figured it out last year that no, that was all post-mortem death, fixing them up for the next life. that they weren't doing that when they were alive. That was dressing them up. I know you're looking at the time and thinking, when is this idiot gonna shut the hell up? My gosh, I just last and final question.
Sure.
Do you think you know how we was talking about 4 bicuspid? You know, Doc, look, if you think that 8 billion people, not one of them should have 4 bicuspid extraction, don't tell me, tell a psychiatrist, okay? Tell them, call them up and say, hey, I'm nuts. Well, the opposite of nuts would be the orthodontist, who I know that treats 100% with Invisalign. He says, yeah, I gave up all the brackets and wires. I'm like, you gave up all the brackets and wires? And then the general dentist. I mean, they're the craziest, because I'll say to them, okay, the literature clearly shows that a posterior composite lasts 6.5, a posterior MOD amalgam lasts 38 years. One's plastic and inert. The other one is metal. I mean, if I find a homeless guy behind the dumpster at KFC and I hold up a metal fork from my kitchen drawer and the plastic fork from the Happy Meal and ask him which one lasts longer, he knows it's the fork. And then they die from recurrent decay, and the metal filling's half mercury. That's not found in a multivitamin. The other half silver, sodium fluoride, tin, stannous fluoride. I mean, it's metal and it's toxic. It obviously lasts longer. And they'll say, well, no, not in my special hands. My special hands, my posterior composites last longer than amalgams. So there's a lot of crazy going on. But how would you address the orthodontist? Do you think it's extremist to give up all metal and all brackets? And they say things like, well, you know, I'm trying to go metal free. Really? What airline do you fly? Tell me about the metal free airline that you fly. So what do you say to the guy, the orthodontist who's out there, 100% Invisalign, no metal? Is that really real? Because in a general dentist, they come in and I'll say, okay, so she's 94, she has Alzheimer's, she doesn't brush, she doesn't floss, and you're putting in class 5 composites where there's 100 articles that they won't even last 6 months. And if you put in amalgam, they last 4 years. She has Alzheimer's. She doesn't know her own children. And you're telling me that you're a cosmetic dentist? I think you're a cosmetic wacko. I mean, if you're putting facial composites on someone who doesn't know their children's name, knowing it'll fail in 6 months, when an amalgam, right there, a class 5 amalgam would last 4 years. So, and it's also an easy, low-hanging fruit to find where the football is during the game. So, extremism. So what would you say to the orthodontist who doesn't need metal?
Well, so I would say that they're obviously a better orthodontist than me, because I've been doing aligners, since 1999. So what's that, 22 years now? And I consider myself, pretty good at it.
They've been out that long?
Howard, we're 5 years apart, brother. Okay, so
I didn't even realize Invisalign's 20 years old.
Invisalign's been out 1999 is when they.
Wow, God, time flies.
So I push the limits on what I'm comfortable doing with aligners, and as I said before, I've got over half my patients are adults, and I'm at about 40% aligners in my practice, and it's a very efficient way to practice if you can, but with the level of difficulty with many of my patients, I just don't think I can get there, and I just don't know how these guys are doing it if they're saying that they treat 90-95% of their patients with aligners. They're obviously better than I am.
Yeah, I know of one dentist in not Green Bay. It's right above the lakes there, above Michigan, then the lake, and then in Canada. I know. I've podcasted 2 or 3 that are 100% Invisalign, and I walked away with the same deal. Like if you own a dental practice, you average 2,000 patients. If you're telling me that of your 2,000 patients, there's no indication for an amalgam, I don't even think you're a doctor. I mean, look at this. Occlusal cavities. If you put on a sealant, think about a sealant. You take technology where you acid etch enamel and dentin, and then put in a bonding agent and composite, all that. But what do? You're acid etching pits and fissures filled with Oreos and Cheez-Its and crackers and crud. And then the research shows that in 1 year, half are failed, and in 2 years, are all failed. Where if you would have taken air abrasion, sprayed out that pit and fissure, Gordon Christen's research even shows that 100% of the time you're indenting. So now you're not doing a sealant, you're doing an occlusal composite, which has a 95% 5-year success rate. But if you just at the end, just boys only, I never do this for girls. I just tell the boys, look, if I do this with silver, it's going to last till you're 40 years old. If we do it with tooth colored, like girls do, we're going to do this 2 more times before you're 40. What do you want to do? I said, what are you worried about more? A shot, me doing this again, or what it looks like on a back tooth? And half the boys like, oh, I never want to do this again. Well, damn right. And when I leave with 4 occlusal amalgams, I think, that's pretty cool. That boy's 6. And he'll be as old as us before they fail. And what do the pediatric dentists do? Sealants. And then I go in their schedule and I look at their schedule, faster, easier, higher quality, lower price. And it's like, dude, 8 times a day, someone's coming in for a deadhead, no charge sealant repair. I mean, we got an office space, we got an assistant, they checked them in, we got gloves, imagine, look at what happened to semis. There's no independent semi drivers because if I picked up a load in San Antonio and brought it to Phoenix and gave it to me and had to drive back empty, well, I can't compete with someone who always takes a full load each way. Sure. And that's where those guys take over. And I go into pediatric dental offices, there's 6 appointments a day of deadhead. Fixing sealants that were bonded to pits and fissures filled with crackers and Cheez-Its and oatmeal. And so, it's also a heuristic of mine. You can really find where the value is when you see 2 smart doctors disagree. That's always where the weather is. Where they all agree, there ain't nothing going on there. But the thunderstorm and tornado and hurricane is where 2 dentists passionately disagree, and that's where you need to find the truth. But, man, I could talk to you for 40 days and 40 nights. If you ever want to do an online course on OrthoTown and or Dental Town, it would be an honor. If you ever want to do a course on the LEAD thing, when you told me that, I had to look up LEAD. I didn't even know what it was. It stands for
Leadership and Environmental and Engineering Design.
Yeah. So you're an engineer too.
Well, I studied engineering in college, but I actually didn't finish my engineering degree. But I got more hours in engineering than I do in other things. So
I'll end with my only engineering joke, and I'm sure you've heard it if you studied engineering. So there's only 3 kinds of engineers in this joke, right? If you plug it in, it's electrical. If it moves like an engine, it's mechanical. And if it doesn't take electricity and doesn't move, it's civil, like a park or a street. And so the 3 of them are having lunch, and the electrical engineer says, well, obviously God was an electrical engineer. And they're like, well, why is that? And they go, well, look at the human, the electricity, the brain, the spine, the nerve. It's all electricity. And the mechanical engineer says, no, I went to a ballet last night, and all the moving parts of the arms and legs, God was definitely a mechanical engineer. And the civil engineer says, no, he was definitely a civil engineer. And they're like, what? Highway, park? What are you talking about? And he said, who else would put a wastewater treatment center through a recreational park?
Very good.
That's my only engineering joke. But, man, you're, seriously, I'm in awe of everything you've done. I just think you're an amazing guy. And this environmental thing is real serious. And if you ever want to do a course on that, I would love it. And also, this is my last question. 4 of my 6 grandkids live in Beeville, Texas.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Have you heard of Beeville?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And I can't figure out why they all talk wrong. They talk funny. They talk wrong. Grandpa talks totally normal. And 4/6 of his children are Texans in cowboy hats, and they talk funny. Should I get him do you think that's an ortho thing I can correct? Or
There's some speech therapy. Send him to Austin.
Oh my gosh.
There's nobody from Texas that lives in Austin anymore.
Yeah, I've heard that, but man, I just love it down there. My gosh. The only thing I feel sorry for is, I had 4 boys, and my oldest had 4 kids, and 3 of them are boys, and every time I go to that poor little Taylor, she's never done a girl thing. Last time I went down there, went pig hunting. It's always hunting, shooting, fishing. And I'm always like, don't you think we should do something girly for Taylor? And Eric's like, what would we do? And so I don't know what I'm doing. But man, I love Beeville, Texas. And even Joe Rogan moved out to Texas. And every time I go to Beeville, I don't know how I can come back to Phoenix. you go down to Eric's house and you go hunting, fishing. My grandkids are driving a go-kart down the street. And when they were doing that in Phoenix when I was a little kid, a police officer would knock on my door once a month and said, your kid was riding a mini bike on the park. And I'm like, and? Did he crash? Did he hit someone? What happened? Well, we just don't want him to do that. And I was born raised in Kansas. And I'm like, well, I don't really care what you want to do or not. He likes riding his little Honda 50, and he's not bothering anybody. But I love the freedom down. And then here in Phoenix, if you tried to put a basketball goal on your driveway, you'd need the HOA, the governor would probably have to sign off on it. Texas, I feel like you could probably just open up an ice cream shop in your front yard and no one would say anything. I mean, would they stop you or would you just do it?
Well, you probably need a health permit, I would think. For an
a health permit? But the level of freedom down there cannot be found in Phoenix.
But if there were kids doing it, they would let it slide.
It was kids. Well, hey, man, thanks so much for coming on the show. It was an honor to podcast you. And if you're ever down there in Beeville, look up for Ran and great. I hope to see you down there someday.
Awesome. Thanks, Howard. Appreciate it.
Take care.
Have a good one.